Dzień dobry, assalamu alaikum, ciao, konnichiwa, bonjour, hola, good morning, good morning, good morning. This is Ken at 10. It's a rather dark day today, as many of you will know. The Monetary Policy Committee of the Bank of England meet today to decide if they're going to raise interest rates once more. It's widely held because inflation is running rampant, and interest rates are the only weapon that the bank really has to try and control inflation, that they will be looking to increase interest rates. They have been increasing them steadily, as you're probably already aware, painfully so if you've got a variable rate mortgage. It looks like we might get the biggest increase we've had since 2008, which would be 0.5%. And you can see from the numbers below, that 0.5% would take us to 1.75%. Then from there, what will happen next? Well, it's difficult to say. And I'll tell you why it's difficult to say, because interest rates have a very long way of impacting the markets, because many of us have fixed rates both on loans and particularly on our finance on our mortgages. So many people will not be impacted by this rise immediately, and therefore it's something that filters through over time. It can take up to 2 years for an interest rate rise to have a serious impact on the economy. But of course, there's also the perception and confidence. And, property markets particularly are built on confidence, and confidence can be a fragile thing. But the other thing that property markets are built on is supply and demand. And whilst, yes, interest rates are going up, and it is very frustrating, still historically, if you look at the graph behind me over the last few years, you can see that interest rates are still at historic lows, really, if you want to look at it relatively. And still, when you look at the rates available, this is not financial advice, there are some competitive rates out there. Of course, it's not going to be the same as it was. And will it stay the same? Will it go up further? Nobody can really tell you. Some economists are predicting that 1.75 is the top of the cycle, and we can expect interest rates to stay there for a while and perhaps tail off after that. Some are suggesting that the raises could go even further as inflation bites harder. With everything going on, it's awful to say that this is yet another massive cost. How will it impact things? Well, landlords will find that their mortgage go up particularly high if they're outside of a fixed rate. And this will have an impact then following through onto rents, because landlords will need to protect themselves against those rises in order to maintain the same income stream, even not to increase the income stream, but they'll need to increase those rents just in order to stay in the same place they already were. So you will find more and more rent increases finding their way through the system. This may ironically free up some property, which is a big problem, as tenants choose to walk if the landlords push too high on the rents, and then the property gets remarketed, etc. So it may free up some stock in the marketplace, but it still means that the housing crisis is very much with us and not getting any better anytime soon, as long as supply is locked away. And the idea that the private market is suddenly going to magically supply all these new homes for rent is just not the case. The government needs to wake up, smell the coffee, and start realizing that the small landlord is the key to unlocking this. And what they need to do, rather than penalize them, is actually to encourage this, because it's a sector of the market much needs. All these vacant shops as well, I do think that they need to get their head around planning. And in these areas where we see massive shopping centres, nothing going on, they really should be turning those to residential to try and help ease the supply crisis. But what the supply crisis also does is means that here we are in a situation with interest rates rising. In a normal market, you'd expect that to have a massively negative effect. But when supply is as low as it is, what you'll find is that people will still fight and compete for the available stock, because there's just not the level of supply out there for the demand to quench the demand. Of course, confidence is a fragile thing, and some people will take a step back, but that's sellers as well as buyers. It's not just the buyers that have a choice to step back. And what we're finding is that some sellers that were considering selling are suddenly saying, we're not sure, there's a lot going on in the world, Ken. I just want to hold back, take stock, a little bit frightened of everything globally, what with Russia and China, let alone interest rates and heating or eating as a choice for some poor families. We're in a dark situation. There's no question about that. But as far as the property market is concerned, it has been the one thing that's shown its resilience throughout this whole pandemic process. We've seen properties being the number one asset base where the stock market's been decimated. Property has shown its strengths and will continue to do so, in my view. So it's not all doom and gloom, but it is tough out there. I think we're going to see a half-point raise today, just because inflation is running so high. Whether we'll see rises after that will remain to be seen. We may well be at the top of the cycle, though. Time will tell. As far as the market's concerned, still getting a lot of valuations, and people are still selling. Two things are happening. Sellers are calling me, buyers are calling me. And as long as that's the case, the market is still there and active. I wouldn't say buoyant, because buoyancy does tend to suggest that there's a large supply and a large number of transactions. And what I suspect we'll see second half of this year is the level of transactions fall off as people just take stock, bolt the hatches, perhaps pay off some of their mortgages where they can. A lot of people are choosing to actually get rid of their mortgages where they've got cash available just to protect themselves in the event this recession gets much, much worse, because it looks like it might do. So I hope you're well. That's it for today. We'll be back tomorrow with another edition. Until then, if you need any advice, you're thinking of marketing, thinking of moving, and just not sure if it's the right time for you, as always, give me a call or drop me an email. I'm working on tomorrow's podcast at the moment. So if you have any interesting questions that you'd like covered in terms of property, interest rates, problems, always love to hear those. And we'll try and incorporate those into the pod. Thanks for watching. Look after yourselves. And if you can, your family and friends. Ciao.